Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Clone Trooper or ARC Trooper 5s. We'll then compare those results to all the other characters we've done thus far and see where he ranks overall, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. And before getting to all that, you can of course already nominate or vote for which character we'll do next. Just head down and respond to my pinned comment below with a character name or vote with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. Whichever single comment gets the most votes in roughly the next 24 hours will be the winner. Okay, and now on to the results for the poll, where we'll see that 77% of voters gave 5s an A, 17% then thought he was a B tier character, 4% said C, 1% gave him a D, and a final 1% said F. Which means when we do all the math here, 5s ends up with an average score of 4.68 and puts him into 3rd place overall, behind only Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I do have to say that these are some rather surprising results. Not that I don't like 5s or anything, quite the opposite really. I very much think he has one of the best, most heroic stories in the Clone Wars. We'll be talking more about that in just a minute or two. But if you told me that he'd be rated higher than, well, some of the characters that he's rated higher than here, I'm not sure I would have foreseen that. And it is, I think, worth noting that there were only about 50,000 or so votes on this poll for 5s, whereas for other characters we've done as of late, they've usually received around 70,000 votes or more. And at the risk of angering fans of 5s, and there clearly are a lot of you out there, so I don't want to do that, but I'd say it's possible that there are a good number of people who didn't vote this week or this time because they maybe weren't all too sure who 5s even is, or don't have a really strong opinion on him. Though that said, at the same time, these results would suggest that if they did or would have known him or looked closer at his story, they likely would think he's a great character and would have given him a high score too. So what am I trying to say here? Well, honestly, I think these results say where overall votes are down but the score is very high. It's that he's not the most popular character in Star Wars overall, but those who know him and his story really do love this character. Okay, and now on to your comments, and as always, a big thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches the videos. It's greatly appreciated, and I do hope you've been enjoying this series as much as I have. So let's begin, as usual, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Jesse Johnstone, who said, "He is what a clone should be, a human. He knows something is wrong and does something about it. Luckily, his efforts weren't all in vain. He saved Ahsoka and Rex's life." And you know, going into the episode Shattered, or the Order 66 episode in the Siege of Mandalore arc, I was very curious and eager to see how they'd handle Rex and Ahsoka, how they'd handle Rex getting Order 66, and how he'd react to it and how Ahsoka would somehow survive it, which we knew she had to. And I thought there was every chance Rex would hesitate, maybe not flat out be able to resist the Order, but that he'd hesitate, and that moment of hesitation would give Ahsoka just enough time to react and save her life. And when that happens and we find out it was because of 5s, and he even tells Ahsoka to find him, to find 5s, or to essentially look into his case, that just brings everything full circle. It's such a great moment. It makes that arc where 5s learns the truth all that much better, because suddenly he didn't die entirely in vain, which it felt like at the time. Suddenly his death and his pursuit of the truth ends up saving Rex and Ahsoka. That then brings us to this comment from Dylan Gilmore, who said, "5s is one of the better characters to come out of the Clone Wars. Like Rex, 5s evolves as a character in each story arc he is a part of, and remains consistent with his morals on the war and the value of his clone brothers' lives. His role in the Umbara and Inhibitor chip arcs are standouts in the series, and because of his actions in the latter, fan favorites Ahsoka and Rex were able to survive Order 66. Overall, a well-made Star Wars character." We also had this comment from Julia A, who said, "5s is one of the best clones in the Clone Wars. When we first saw him in Rookies with Domino Squad, and seeing 99 killed a little later, we are shown his true nature. The 5s arc is a pure example of this. His anger over Tup and the chip that he eventually discovers that is in all of the clones' heads demonstrates his desire to have the clones treated fairly. The mission, the nightmares, they're finally over. 5s deserves an A+++. Then we also had this comment from Benjamin von Holmberg, who said, "Everyone loves the Umbara arc, but to me the finding out about Order 66 arc was the heaviest one to watch. Like someone else here said, he sought the truth despite knowing that it most likely would end in his demise. And the fact that his own brother killed him, it's really quite something. I'm very happy he died knowing the truth. He deserved that. The mission, the nightmares, they're finally over, somewhere between B+ and an A- for me. We also then had this comment from Al Does a Good, who said, if someone were to tell me after Rookies that those same clones would become integral characters for the rest of the series, I would not have believed them. I like that, taking characters that seemed like nothing and building them up. And I still remember when Season 3 of the Clone Wars premiered with back-to-back episodes on the same night, those being Clone Cadets and then ARC Troopers, and thinking, this is a little strange that we're getting a backstory for these random clones from way back in Season 1, from the episode Rookies, and that we're also then getting a follow-up to it as well. Little did I know at the time what that would be the start of. Little did I know what Fives and Echo in particular would go through, the characters they would become. And as I've said before, maybe the greatest achievement of the Clone Wars series was turning the clone troopers into actual characters, into human beings really, and great characters and humans at that. So great that they now rank up there with some of the best characters in all of Star Wars. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Corvus Albus, who said, Fives is my absolute favorite of the clones. Sorry Rex, you're a close second. We see him turn from eager cadet to weary ARC trooper, someone willing to speak his mind and stand his ground, even more so than even Rex. And he gave the best speeches in dire situations. He pretty much saved them all on Umbara, found out about Order 66, and paid the ultimate price trying to save everyone. And though he failed in preventing the execution of Order 66, his actions saved both Rex and Ahsoka, which ultimately even helped out the rebellion, so it wasn't in vain. I only wish we could have seen more of him. I really miss him, and his death is the most difficult scene to rewatch. I still get emotional every time I see it. To quote Krell, you should have listened to the ARC Trooper from the beginning. He was right. Despite his name, he really was so much more than just a number. We also had this comment from Jessica A, who said, I love Rex, but Five is my favorite clone. He's one of my favorite characters. He really epitomized the tragedy of the clones. We followed him from the start to the bitter end, from cadet to ARC Trooper to fugitive, and ultimately martyr. He lost his entire original squad. Even knowing Echo's fate, I still react with Fives during that explosion at the Citadel, and it's sad knowing that was the last time they would see each other. He constantly tried to do the right thing, even going against his superiors to do it, evidenced in the Umbara arc, but most notably in the Order 66 arc. He risked everything seeking the truth, but it wasn't enough, and he died to another clone, knowing what was coming. His death is without a doubt the saddest scene in the show, but in the end he made it possible for Rex and Ahsoka to live. The mission, the nightmares, they're finally over. This was a true hero, A+. We also then had this comment from Liam Thompson, who said, as much as I complained about the Clone Wars changing things up from the original stories, the inhibitor chip arc was a really good interpretation. In some ways it made a lot more sense than no one noticing there were executive orders for contingencies that severely overstepped the power of the Supreme Chancellor. I once saw a program talking pragmatically about 9/11 conspiracy theories, and it concluded with the point that in order to have a conspiracy at such a massive scale, hundreds or thousands of people have to be in on it, without a single one being overcome by their conscience to speak out about it. Real conspiracies like MK Ultra were run on an extremely strict need-to-know basis, with even the president being oblivious to it. So the perfect conspiracy is one that the people responsible for don't even know of its existence. And I was, and still very much am, a big fan of the Karen Traviss Republic Commando novels. They did a great job of humanizing the clones and turning them into actual characters, long before the Clone Wars series actually did that. But I do have to agree that it was a little odd that, at that point, Order 66 was just one of many different, I guess you could call them, contingency orders that all the clones knew. Because I do think the Jedi would wonder why exactly is one of these contingency orders to kill all the Jedi. Anyway, one thing I do love about those books is when it gets to Order 66, it does a great job, as good as can be expected I think, of explaining why some clones did and did not follow it. And as I've said before, I think the reason why George Lucas ultimately kind of retconned that and decided to make the chips responsible for clones responding without question, making them essentially mindlessly obey Order 66, the whole good soldiers follow orders thing, it's because it's hard to believe after watching all these years of the Clone Wars and seeing how many clones think for themselves, like Fives, it's hard to believe so many would just carry out Order 66 without question. Alright, and now let's get to just a few more final comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Leif Sorensen, who said, we watched Five from the day he graduated, to rookie, veteran, and to someone who could have stopped Palpatine. Then this one from Fenrir, who said, I give him an A simply because of the effect his death had on me. Never teared up during any kind of movie or show, but this scene hit me right in the feels. Then this one from Darth Vader, whose alter ego Anakin was there when Fives died, and he had this to say. His name may have been a number, but he was not just another number. None of them were. Also this one from Smitty2, who said, I gave him an A. He's honestly one of my favorite characters. As a clone, I'd say I probably like him even more than Rex. The best thing about him is how frustrating his last arc is. Us knowing that he's right, yet nobody believing him. I think it's brilliant. And finally here, this comment from Vincent207, who said, it's amazing how what started off as cannon fodder for the prequels turned into one of the best things about Clone Wars. And I agree. Again, I think the greatest achievement of the Clone Wars may very well be turning the clones into actual characters. I mean, in the prequels, sadly, they're not all that much different from the droids. Hell, the droids even get more lines of dialogue, and are even shown to have more personality. We even get that little scene with 2 super battle droids and R2 in Revenge of the Sith. And the most we ever get from the clones in those movies is a hint at some sort of good rapport or relationship between Cody and Obi-Wan, that they've worked well together when Cody asks Obi-Wan, when have I ever let you down? But then a couple scenes later, Order 66 happens, and Cody, without a second thought, tells his troopers to open fire on Obi-Wan, and they all just do it, also without hesitation. And in that moment, the idea that the clones are in any way real characters or independent thinkers is completely shattered. But thanks to the Clone Wars, thanks to characters like Fives, we all know they're far, far more than what the prequels portrayed them as. We know they're far more than just good soldiers following orders. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Fives, or what I or anyone else had to say about him in this video. You can also feel free to nominate or vote for which character we do next. Either way, head down to the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.